We're now recording on Zoom.
Yeah.
Dr. Bird, I just wanted to confirm that everything was okay audiovisual wise on your end.
Ask any hard questions.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. For those attending the meeting virtually, we will be getting started shortly. Thank you.
Yeah. Good morning, John. Director McPartland just walked in. I'll call the meeting to order. District Secretary, would you please call the roll?
Certainly. Chair Rayburn,
Here.
Vice Chair Haudashelt, Director Allen, Director Byrd, Director Byrd. We'll come back. Director Chapman,
Here.
Director Daniels, Director Dufty, Director Freericks,
Here.
Director Hernandez, Director Holmes, Director Jane,
Here.
Director Lee, Director Maple, here, Director McPartland,
Here.
Director Saltzman, Director Torres,
Here.
Director Kennedy, Dowden Calvillo, McConnell, and Stallard, and Director Byrd.
I'm here.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you. We have a quorum.
Great. I'll introduce everyone to Director McPartland, commissioned military officer, and he's served on the BART board for now 16 years. Would you please lead us in the pledge? I'll commission you.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hey. Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the 137th meeting of the Capitol Quarter Joint Powers Authority Board of Directors. Please note today's meeting is an in-person meeting in the San Francisco Bay Area Rapid Transit Boardroom, 2150 Webster Street. Board members participating via teleconference are all doing so in locations posted 72 hours in advance of the meeting. You can download the agenda and presentation materials at www.capitolquarter.org/ccjpa-board. All speakers, including CCJPA board and staff, are requested to announce their names as they begin to speak. For public participants who joined in person, if you would like to provide public comments, please complete a request to address the board form available at the entrance to the boardroom and hand it to the secretary before the item is considered by the board. For public participants who joined by telephone, your microphones are automatically muted. If you wish to speak on an agenda item, please dial *9 to virtually raise your hand when public comment is announced. When it's your turn to speak, you may dial *6 to accept an unmute request. For participants who joined by Zoom, please use the raise hand feature if you wish to speak. To board members and staff who joined by Zoom, please mute your microphones whenever you are not speaking to avoid background noise. If you wish to make a general public comment on a subject not on the agenda, you will be given an opportunity to speak under item 7. Public comment is going to be limited to 2 minutes per person per item. Board members, in order to reduce confusion throughout the meeting, when it's time for directors' remarks, please identify yourselves. Vice Chair Haudashelt, who is on his way, and I will speak last. In the interest of time and to provide an opportunity for equal participation, please try to keep your comments concise. In accordance with the CCJPA bylaws, I want to take this opportunity to announce that I will be creating a Link 21 ad hoc committee to review Link 21 analysis that has already been developed to bring the project to a Stage Gate 2 decision. Members will have the opportunity to review the work to date and report back to the full CCJPA on its recommendation on whether the board endorses the recommendation for Stage Gate 2. As a reminder, Stage Gate 2 will make a recommendation on vehicle technology for the Transbay crossing, BART gauge or standard gauge. Details such as specific alignments, stations will come later in the project. My goal is to have at least one representative from each of the member agencies. We are required under the bylaws to have at least 4 members. And you can reach out to Rob Padgett and he will keep track of who's willing to serve with us. I expect only a couple of meetings at most. And finally, I wish to congratulate the CCJPEA's Jim Allison for being honored by Sacramento Women in Transportation Seminar as a man who is a leader in transportation and has made an outstanding contribution toward the advancement of women and minorities in the transportation industry. Jim recently received recognition with the WTS 2024 Honorable Ray LaHood Award. Thanks to people like Jim in our small organization, the leadership and recognition of the CCJPEA is astonishingly influential. This concludes the report of the chair. Thank you very much. Let's move on. There we go. I should have given a little more room for applause. You're deserving. Let's move to the consent calendar.
Move approval.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Would you please call the roll?
Certainly. Chair Rayburn,
Yay.
Vice Chair Haudeshelt, Director Byrd. Director Byrd? Okay, looks like you are gesturing yes.
There he is.
Recorded as yes. Director Chapman?
Aye.
Director Freericks?
Aye.
Director Hernandez?
Aye.
Director Jane?
Yes.
Director Maple?
Aye.
Director McPartlin?
Aye.
Director Saltzman?
Yes.
Director Torres?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. Next, we move to the action and discussion items. First is Caltrans District 3 mitigation plan, including capital corridor service support.
Hello, this is Rob Padgett with Capital Corridor. So this first item is to authorize this Capital Corridor Joint Powers Authority to receive funding for service improvements delivered as a mitigation to the I-80 Managed Lanes project. Details on this are included in your packet. The funding provided would be $5 million a year for 3 years, with the potential for additional funding provided beyond the 3-year period through the toll revenue that is included in the project. District 3 sought Capital Corridor Joint Powers Authority for a suite of potential system enhancements as mitigation as part of this project, including the potential for fare reductions and a return to full service if we've not been funded by the time we receive the funds. The board resolution will authorize CCJPEA staff to negotiate a suitable participation in the mitigation plan for Capital Corridor service. It's our recommendation to make this approval today, and I'll be happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. I will first ask if we have any public speakers on the item.
I didn't receive any speaker cards, Chair Rayburn, and I don't see any hands raised on Zoom.
Thank you. I see Director Saltzman has her hand raised.
Thank you. Of course, we want funds to restore service and to reduce fares. I just want to ensure that nothing within the action we're taking today would suggest that this is kind of ongoing investment and ongoing mitigation, that it's clear in the agreement that they're going to get credited for whatever amount of years they're giving the funding for.
Yeah, it's a good question. And what we will have to include in the final, or they will have to include in the final environmental impact statement, is details about exactly what each of the mitigation strategies will include. And we will certainly follow up and ask that question. I don't have the answer for you today on specifically how the analytics support that, but But we will, as we go through this, make sure that that is the way it is framed in terms of the mitigation provided by Capital Corridor.
Great, thank you.
I see a hand raised in the San Jose Council room.
I think this is a terrific program. It offsets some of the fares and it mitigates some of the VMT increases on the highways. So I'm fully in support of this and I'm happy to make a motion.
Thank you, Director Jane.
I'm happy to second the motion.
Second from Lucas Frerichs. Would you please call the vote?
Yes. Chair Rayburn,
Yay.
Director Byrd. Director Byrd.
Hello.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Director Chapman.
Aye.
Director Frerichs.
Aye.
Director Hernandez.
Aye.
Director Jane.
Yes.
Director Maple.
Aye.
Director Apartland.
Aye.
Director Saltzman.
Yes.
Director Torres.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, everyone. Next item is the CCJPA Supplemental Environmental Impact Report for the Sacramento Roseville Phase 1 project. This calls for action.
The next item will be covered by Jim Allison, our Manager of Planning. This will be another important step and an exciting project in our corridor for the Sacramento to Roseville Third Track project. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Jim.
Hello, board members. Jim Allison here, Manager of Planning. This is about a supplemental EIR because of two locations that changed in terms of project inclusion since the November 2015 EIR decision. So the actions that you'd be taking today are in two steps, and we'll go over those in just a bit. We are the lead agency for CEQA, and we did get a few comment letters, and those were responded to in due course. So I'll go over the locations of that. They're at kind of the extreme ends. We have the two red dots near each other are in reference to highway undercrossings below the rail bridges above it. And then the dot up in Roseville is for the layer of a yard location. And you'll see them on the next map in more close detail. In the red circles, the blue areas are the newly included widened bridges in anticipation of a potential widening of the freeway underneath it. So we wanted to make sure whatever we build it once and we don't build a short bridge and then tear it out later. So this is the reason to include that. And then this next slide in the green is the new layer.
Excuse me, we're not able to see the slides on Zoom.
Okay, I'll go back. Oops.
I don't know if any other remote location has that issue.
Hi, Director Jane, this is April. I'll check on it.
But
Okay,
now
it
we
looks
can
like
see
it's been, okay, thank you.
Very good.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank
Okay.
you.
So the two dots close to each other, then the one dot up in Roseville. So I'll go in the red circles here, you'll see the location of the rail bridges over the freeway that would be widened potentially in the future. And then the green area is the location of the new layover yard. Before it was down in the lower left corner there around that curve. This is a more preferred area once the other location was examined a little more in the design process. So what we found as we went through the supplemental EIR is that there are really no new significant effects due to these two locational changes. So there's no new mitigations required, but there's still the process that we need to go through that the board has to adopt in conjunction with this approval process. So the actions for the board are outlined here, two steps. First, the draft SEIR has to be certified as complying with CEQA. And then second, a decision to approve the revised project as modified with these two new additions and the following findings that you can read on the screen there. These are all findings and in the resolutions that you'll see. So the idea is to pass the first resolution, then take a roll call and then do the next resolution, and that will be the compliance step with CEQA and project approval. Any questions?
Let's first see if we have any public comments.
I didn't receive any speaker cards, Chair Rayburn, and I don't see any public comment hands on Zoom.
Okay, and that fits with the character of the project, that it hasn't elicited large numbers of pitchforks and torches. It's embraced by all, I think. Let's hear from the directors. Anyone? How about a motion?
I'll make a
Actually,
motion.
I had my hand raised.
Oh,
Supervisor Jane, please go ahead.
Yeah, I noticed that there's an 8,000 square foot building for staff that's being constructed. And I don't know if CCJPA has any policy towards building electrification. I would like to see the HVAC system or that building to be all electric if possible. I don't know if that's been considered.
This is Jim Allison responding to that question. We are not yet in that point of design, but we could take that in as a comment and build it with, you know, energy efficiency in mind. But I'm not myself involved in the building design phase of it yet, but we'll take that comment.
Thank you for your comment, Mr. Jane.
I'm happy to move approval.
Second.
To accept the EIR and then the design.
Second.
I already had a motion from
Yeah.
Director Hernandez and Directors McPartland. Would you please call the roll?
thank you. And Chair Rayburn, just so I could clarify, are we taking one vote for both items or are we voting on them separately?
Separately.
Are we required to take two?
Yes.
And
That's correct.
take the first
Chair Rayburn.
item.
All right, so for the first resolution, we'll begin the vote for that. Chair Rayburn,
Yay.
Director Byrd,
I don't
Director
know.
Chapman.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I heard yay.
Okay.
Director Chapman,
Aye.
Director Freewicks,
Aye.
Director Hernandez, Director Jane,
Yes.
Director Maple. Aye. Director McPartland,
Aye.
Director Saltzman,
Yes.
Director Torres.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. That motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, everyone. The next item is going,
Chair Rayburn, I'm so sorry. We have to do the second vote on the
Yes.
other part.
maybe I'll call for motions.
Jane moves to
Director Jane
approve.
Second.
and
Torres.
Director Torres.
Thank you, Chair Rayburn.
Please call the roll.
Chair Rayburn,
Yay.
Director Byrd, Director Byrd.
Aye. I don't know why you can't hear me.
Thank you. I can hear you. Thank you. Director Chapman,
Aye.
Director Freericks,
Aye.
Director Hernandez,
Aye.
Director Jane,
Yes.
Director Maple. Aye. Director McPartland.
Aye.
Director Saltzman
Yes.
and Director Torres.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion carries unanimously as well.
Okay. Next up, we have, I think, a very exciting capital project update on the spotlight on the Carquinez Crossing Phase 2, which is a 75% update. Jim Allison.
All right, Jim Allison, Manager of Planning once again. This is a presentation about some follow-on to a presentation that we did on phase 1 of the study. So I'll walk you through a little bit of that background that we took on a couple of board meetings ago, and then we'll go through this progress on phase 2, which is in progress right now. So we'll look at the past and how we reduced from 14 options down to 4. And then now what we're looking at is out of those 4 options, really only 1 option seems viable from an engineering perspective right now. We're looking at engineering feasibility only. We didn't do any other social, analysis of population, markets, or anything like that. So this is just an initial engineering feasibility analysis. So the reason for doing this, to remind you, is, and a lot of people get reminded every day, is the old bridge lifts from time to time because it has to for marine traffic. It is the second largest consistent source of our delay, and it pushes trains out of slot. And it would also hamper, if we were ever to increase service, we would just have that many more impacts throughout the day. It would be very devastating not to have this fixed. So the goal of the study was to develop conceptual options for a high-level bridge that does not need to lift for marine traffic. And I mentioned the 14 route options. We really looked at just about everything that could be conceivably pursuable, and we eliminated that in a prior board meeting. We reduced it down to 4 options, and we're going to concentrate on those. So we looked at just about everything you could imagine. We did filter out the different options we had in the phase 1 step, and that's what left us with these 4 routes to study: the Vallejo route, the Interstate 80 route, which is also a Vallejo route, and then we have 2 Benicia Martinez routes. We have a west side one and an east side one, and we've kind of changed the names because it's easier to talk about west and east at this point in time. But Shoreline and Makoko were the prior names that we used in this slide that you had seen before. So with those 4 route options, the areas that we have not covered in the study so far are outlined in that shaded area, but we've definitely looked at the crossings now, and that's what we're going to present on today. So we'll go over those 4 routes, and the common assumption that we have for each of these routes is that each could accommodate 2 trains per hour or more per the state rail plan. So that's a built-in assumption there. I'll give you a preview about the Vallejo options. What you'll see in just a minute is both of those options would require a very massive and heavy bridge structure to clear the navigational channels. And when I say massive and heavy, I mean nearly record-setting in terms of size, because of what you'll see in just a bit. The issue of accommodating freight trains would require an additional bridge along the Vallejo shoreline. That's mainly due to grades that would be required to get freight trains across there. That would also involve extensive tunneling on both sides, with the Vallejo side underneath some developed areas. And then finally, there would be grade separations with a rail either above the roadway or below the roadway. And that could be extensive and very disruptive within the city of Vallejo, even more so if we were to include freight. So the reasons that we would have to build a high-level bridge really relate to both of these maps here. In the red are navigational channels. On the lower map is the navigational channel roughly right across Crockett into Vallejo, and the openings needed are 1,000 feet and 950 feet, which are quite extensive, and that's what the bridge would have to span. On the upper picture is the navigational channels on the Benicia Martinez area of things, and that heavier red line is the one that we have right now. We cross on that Benicia Martinez. But these are the pieces to avoid, and you have to give clear spans so these ships can travel under there. So just a quick engineering talk by a planner here. So there's many forces acting on bridges. There's wind and wave and other loadings, including both the rail infrastructure and the trains themselves. So all of those work in competition with the structure of the bridge to ensure the bridge is stable. And then the further apart you need to have the spans, because you need to not block it for ships. the bridge has to be even stronger to resist the forces that work in harmony, all the wind and wave, everything that would make it unstable. So in response, you start building it bigger and stronger, but then the bridge itself is challenging to even hold itself up. And so it gets bigger still and more costly. So at the bottom kind of cartoon picture there, finally, we have a happy bridge, but a lot of dollars spent to make sure that bridge is stable. So in the Vallejo situation, because of those long spans needed, there's only certain types of bridge options that would be available. And we're in the Benicia Martinez area, the span needed is about 650 feet, and there's more options available, less costly options, because you don't have to build a bridge that is as robust. And this is really shown in this graph here. When the span length goes up, and we're looking at the big tall blue rectangle, that's the Vallejo situation. The other situation where you've somewhere between 500 and near 700 span, that just means much less cost to offset the moment and the forces that would act on the bridge. So it's very clear that the Vallejo bridge is much more costly to consider moving ahead. So we'll look into some of the potential negative community impacts that would be involved with the Vallejo option. We're going to zoom in on Vallejo in just a second, but you can see the orange line there is in Vallejo is there's an existing Union Pacific corridor. It's not heavily used, but it does go through the city of Vallejo. So that's a bonus. That's nice to have, but it's not really up to the snuff, up to standards that we would hope to use in the future. So zooming in a little more, we can see an elevation, and now you can see some of the tunnels that would go under the southern side of the crossing and then on the northern side of the crossing. And it is the tunnels on the northern side of the crossing that will go under communities and in their attempt to get back to that already existing line. And then you can see also in the magenta color, the freight compatible route. That's the piece that needs to spin off if you're going to have freight going through that route. So again, a visual impact, a structural impact, it's in the water. So quite a accommodation there for that. One thing I did want to draw attention to in terms of tunneling is that if you're going to be underneath residences and things like that, we can't get quite deep enough to avoid some of the vibration. Tunnels need to be deep enough to be out of sight, out of mind. And there's some challenges in this situation to get deep enough to do that. Finally, there's grade crossings to consider. With a project of this magnitude in terms of levels of service, there's a number of grade crossings that would be impacted here. Doesn't mean all of these would need grade separation, but a good number might, and that would have to be evaluated. But it's quite obvious that there would be an impact within the community of Vallejo itself to accommodate enough trackage and safe trackage to let the future service pass through. And that just goes up when you start considering freight trains. So to conclude, a very massive heavy bridge structure on the Vallejo option. Accommodating freight is a challenge. And then you have those tunneling impacts followed off by the cherry on top, which is the grade separations themselves, either above or below the roadway. They would be pretty disruptive to communities and intersections and things like that that would be affected. So now we'll shift to the Benicia Martinez options. The one that we looked at, one of them is west of I-680, the other one is east of I-680. Well, if we remember the picture here that we saw with the navigation channels, there's two navigation channels. So that's going to make that west option a little more complex. It is also a bit more disruptive to the city of Martinez because of elevations of where it touches down to ground versus the east option. And then on the very north option, it's a very complex weave of getting a rail bridge structure through the complex freeway mazes of 680 and 780 to on-ramps. So that looks very challenging itself. On the east end, the I-680 really doesn't have as many of those challenges, but it does have a wetland area that on the Martinez side of it, which is probably its biggest challenge compared to other options. So the other benefit of the Benicia Martinez options that you can think of it in two parts. There's a shoreline component part, and then there's the bridge part. So I'm going to talk about the shoreline component, which has the advantage of possibly being bundled separately or phased in separately, which gives immediate and independent benefit to rail operations, whether or not you do have the bridge phase. So we'll go into those a little bit. Some of the common options, and these are common to the east and the west option, is that you could conceive of a dedicated passenger set of tracks and a dedicated freight set of tracks. This would go a long ways to supporting greater frequency of Capital Corridor service, and the separation is advantageous as well. And the reason to do the improvements is due to you can create higher speeds and also adjust the sea level rise and be more resilient, more capacity. The cons about this are, though, that if you're straightening things out, there's oftentimes infrastructure in the way or above you if you're talking about going under a hillside or something like that. And then you also have the stabilization of different slopes to consider. But the nice thing, though, is that you can look at improvements as being phased in, and these different blue circled or captured areas are sort of the different option areas where you can straighten things out, increase speeds and get more capacity and build it in a segmental way. And then finally, you'd have the bridge at the end. Some of the ideas for dealing with the shoreline area here, this concept of freight and passenger separation involves cutting into the hillside and stabilizing it, much like the examples with the retaining walls there. But you can get higher speeds, but you can see the freight would be down lower, than up on another bench would be the passenger solution. And then sea level rise would be built into sort of for quite a while to the passenger option, and then freight could always come up to that level with the retaining walls. So now we're going to talk a little bit closer on the west option. The reason this one is not as advantageous is there's 2 navigation channels to span. And then there's other impacts because you're having to realign right in the refinery area in Martinez, and then some of the impacts within town where it touches down. Then finally, we talked about the freeway weave at the north end. The east end does not have those problems that I talked about. In the dot, which just unfortunately wasn't available, the aerial was not available for the area, for that particular piece, but that's the wetland area that would have to be looked at for that east option. The other interesting thing about the east option, if you look on the top of the map where you see the kind of bridge cross section in blue and then a little bit in purple, with a truss structure, it's not incrementally that much more to build a passenger track on top of the freight track, and you can take advantage of the truss structure to do that. The passengers can climb at a higher grade than the freights, and that way we keep both things again separated, and also provide for goods movement along with the passenger increase in frequency and service that we're aiming for out of this project. So just to bring back the comparison of the 2 Benicia Martinez options, the west option has the issue of the 2 navigational channels, the disruptions to the refinery and the western starting point of the new bridge, and then the challenges of getting the rail through the freeway maze. And on the east option, it avoids most of those challenges, but does have those wetlands. The concepts that we have, whether it's a truss structure where it's stacked one above the other, or a different concrete construction where they're side by side, either which way, it allows more easily for freight and passenger to be served in terms of this improvement, this big infrastructure improvement. It will allow speeds to increase, And the east option has much more minimal impacts to the downtown Martinez area. They both have in common sea level rise and resiliency improvements and have also that same ability to phase projects in. So as we kind of go through a relative scale ranking here, where you want a low score in this case, we look at issues of bridge complexity, the approaches complexity, the community impacts, and freight barriers. Both the Vallejo routes, with a note here that the approaches complexity and the community impacts have to be studied a little bit more, but we can guesstimate that they're going to be quite impactful, especially on the I-80 route for the approaches and the community impacts. So both of those routes are rated generally quite high with very strong impacts as compared to the options around Benicia Martinez. The west route, as we talked about, their approaches are difficult, not as many community impacts, but there's some additional freight barriers to that. And it will probably give the winner, the gold cup goes to the east route. So that's the one that I think that we would favor retaining as we move ahead. And I want to talk last slide here, just a little bit about what we have yet to do. So that we're not making the decision today, it's not an action item, but we're just giving you an inkling of where we're kind of headed with this. The areas that on this map that are in the dashed line are areas that still need to be studied. We need to look at the Sassoon wetlands impact, the Jameson Canyon area, which is the magenta line up on the top, and then look a little further into the Vallejo grade separation investigation. And we have enough left in the budget to do some geologic studies looking at the slope stability and see what is actually feasible, whether what I showed you has a chance of happening there. So we will follow up with a final report, which should be available in late summer. And finally, we do want to indicate that this project itself is one of the key elements that will be absorbed into the Corridor ID program with the Federal Railroad Administration. So it's an example of having engineering feasibility analysis inform the planning aspect of it. And so we're very thankful that we've been having the opportunity to go into this, and we're happy to present this progress report to you, even though it's not done yet, but you can kind of get a sense of where we're headed. I'll take any questions if you have some. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim, for a tremendous synopsis of a project that's been in the crosshairs of the board for a long time to reduce those delays from the bridge. Maritime traffic occurs on almost a daily basis. Let's see if we have any public comments.
I didn't receive any speaker cards, Chair Rayburn, but I do see several hands raised on Zoom.
Please move forward. You have 2 minutes.
We'll go first to Alita. Alita, please go ahead.
Thank you. Good morning, President Robert Rayburn and members. Alita Dupree for the record. My pronouns are she and her, and I'm with Team Folds. Very good presentation, one of the best capital presentations I've seen. This is very complicated. I appreciate the explanations. Trying to build a new bridge in a populated area isn't easy, but it looks like we're being proactive. Resiliency is very important. And looking at the stability of the bluffs, there's some issues in San Diego area, in Del Mar with a railroad that goes along the bluffs north of the city. So we definitely want to keep that in mind. And tunneling is challenging. The current railroad bridge is over 90 years old. It's long overdue. And drawbridges really show their age. There are a lot of issues in New Jersey with what is called the Portal Bridge. And Amtrak is having a hard time with that. They sometimes have to hammer the bridge into place because it doesn't close correctly sometimes. Now they're spending over $1 billion, I think, on a new Portal North Bridge, which will be a fixed crossing. So I hope that we can really get to work with this. Long bridges for railroads they're out there. In New York, you have the Williamsburg and the Manhattan bridges. which carry the New York City subway over them. So I think cable stay is certainly a viable option. We have it on our beloved Bay Bridge that's not far from the BART boardroom. So I hope that we can come to a decision soon and get into construction. It's no fun sitting delayed on a bridge anywhere. Thank you.
Thank you, Alita. Do we have other comments? Please.
Next, we'll go to Michael. Michael, please go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me okay?
Loud and clear, Michael.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, this is Michael Barnbaum, and I'm at my home office in Sacramento, California, adjacent to Del Paso Boulevard, which is its own rail transportation redevelopment area. I want to speak on this crossing matter, and I want to say this is a very complex, difficult matter, but from the presentation I have watched today and seen, I feel that staff has done their homework. Staff has done their research. It was a fairly difficult decision I could see to go from 14 options down to 4 and then award the cup to 1, the east option for Benicia Martinez east of 680. I did hear from staff that there is not necessarily a formal decision to be made today. I was prepared to recommend what staff is recommending, that the board take a vote on it. But if staff, as they presented, need in their timeline this to go up until late summer, I would be comfortable recommending to the board that this matter be brought back as an action item on a hard date of Wednesday, September 18th. And hopefully that could be the day that this action be taken to award this to the east option for the Benicia Martinez area for a service that stresses on time performance very heavily. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Any other speakers?
Yes, we have a couple more. Next speaker is Derek. Derek, please go ahead.
Hi, this is Derek Satron. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great, thank you. Hi, I read the service 2 days a week, and I have been stuck at the crossing here many times, sometimes for a very long time, or because of that stoppage, there's cascading delays. So I'm looking forward to seeing this study move forward. I appreciate staff's analysis here. I just want to kind of raise a concern. First of all, the fact that we're kind of assuming a freight crossing that will be used for this for UPRR, it comes at a cost, given that because of that assumption, we're necessarily scoping in much higher levels of construction for this crossing for a Vallejo option, and therefore taking it off the table. And so I think I understand there might be reasons for that in terms of accessing goods movement funding and other sources of capital funding. But if we are preemptively taking options that could serve underserved communities like Vallejo off the table, I think we need to start thinking about what is Capital Corridor or the public going to receive in return for scoping in these freight grades initially and taking options off the table. So I hope that that's kind of in the back of the Joint Powers Authority's mind as we move forward with this. And then I just, second of all, I just want to hope that this analysis and this study is being incorporated into the Link 21 program in terms of the mega region, and also considering, as we consider kind of sea level rise improvements along the Carquinez shoreline, how this can be scoped in to make sure that electrification is not taken off the table in terms of design of any type of double or quad track that we might provide along that area. So thanks again for staff, and I appreciate the info here.
Thank you for your comments. Any additional speakers?
Yes, we do. Liz Ames, BART Director, please go ahead.
Good morning. This is Liz Ames, BART Director, and I really applaud this effort, the study to look at a crossing. And as you know, this is has been my top priority with Capitol Corridor. I met with the ports of Benicia and Stockton, and you know, they want this bridge replaced because the freighters going through the Carquinez Strait are very large and they barely pass that bridge that we're trying to replace. So with that, I think it's imperative that this project be even more aggressively pursued than the crossing between Oakland and San Francisco, which is known as Link 21. And to the previous person's comment, I do appreciate the separation of freight and passenger rail, but you know, to assume freight and passenger rail through Vallejo at a high cost seems to be killing the opportunity to look at just Vallejo access for passengers only. And that would capture, you know, Marin, Solano counties beyond Vallejo in the future if rail were to expand up north to the outer reaches of the 9-county Bay Area. So with that, I would like to see the study look at passenger only through Vallejo to Crockett, and I hope to see a public-private partnership with Union Pacific, because we definitely need to separate freight and rail to expedite service, but we also need partners, you know, financially, and perhaps we can have, you know, their participation at the next go around. But thank you so much. Great work overall, staff and the board. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair Rayburn, we have one additional hand.
No additional hands.
We have one additional hand.
More, please.
Okay.
It's a popular topic.
Doug, please go ahead.
This is Doug Kerr of the Rail Passenger Association of California. I understand the presentation was from an engineering perspective, and I appreciate all of the input that we received today. I wanted to add, I really do like the east alternative, particularly because it preserves the station in Martinez, which is a transfer point between buses and trains, and it's a transfer point between trains and trains. It's a significantly better transfer point than Sacramento Valley Station is, where the tracks are a quarter mile away from the station itself. So I'm completely in favor of the east alternative here, and I hope that we consider that going forward. Thank you.
I don't see any additional hands raised, Chair Rayburn.
Thank you very much. We'll turn next to the members of the board. I see Director McPartland nodding his head, and then Director Salzman. And do I have?
We do have a hand raised in Directors Janes and Torres location.
And Director Jane. Director McPartland. And
thank you very much. I will have to end up saying that first of all, Jim Allison, congratulations on giving a presentation that is complex to the extreme and difficult to be able to put it in terms and cover the degree of complexity associated with what you're doing, and not leave anything out which potentially could end up biting you in at some time later, and make it understandable. So amazing presentation. I've only got one small question, and that is that in looking at least at the illustration that you had for slope stability, if those are unpopulated areas on top of that steep slope, then looking at the same kind of construction that they have on Highway 1, when I used to do a lot of driving on Highway 1, during the rainy season and the kind of construction they continually had to do and then redo again. Is it cheaper if there's no infrastructure on top? And it's an overhead question you can answer at another time, as to whether it'd be easier, better, and safer to take the hill down. If there's infrastructure on top of it, that's a non-starter. But otherwise, that's just a personal question that I have. And magnificent presentation. Thank you very much. I'm
going to take my planner card and not be able to answer that because you asked engineering questions on that. I think I will say that it does have to be evaluated in terms of what you're looking at. And I think part of the geologist going out to those different locations, seeing what the type of soils are. Everything here has been sort of, remote view and looking at different digital sort of resources, but ground truthing will be very important for that. And that will be looked at and, should we be able to move forward with this project for certain. So.
Thank you.
Wish I knew the engineering.
And also one component that I looked at that I was curious about and you didn't give anything on would be the guesstimate on timelines associated with the east versus the west construction projects.
We didn't evaluate the timelines for this yet, so it's very preliminary. And we'll build a better picture of that as we need to do a lot of steps, and this will get absorbed into that corridor ID program and prioritized in terms of that. And the shoreline improvements look like a good way to walk your way into something better for the service, improvements in speed and reliability. So
again, thank you very much. Superb presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Director Salzman, followed by Jane and Hernandez.
Thank you for the presentation. I have to admit, when I read it over the weekend, I did not understand it at all. So I think the more we can do to be ready to communicate to the public at some point, because I think the public, very few of them could just look at this presentation, understand. It was much more understandable today, but I know this is very complex, but we have to figure out how to explain why one route isn't going to work or is going to work in ways people can explain it. Derek asked some questions about the freight trade-offs. Do you have any responses to that?
Yes, I do. I think, as was pointed out, there are some advantages of working with freight and combining the projects together in some scales that work, like the one on top of the other on the east option. So I think there's some definite advantages to doing that. And operationally, even if we were to separate and just leave them there on the lift bridge, they're going to still be out of slot with us when they rejoin, when that bridge, and then we'll be down the line and we'll have that randomness hitting us. And so I think it's more prudent to solve all trains operations all at once. And there would be a cost to that, but there's also a benefit for freight goods movement and things like that. All of that has to be evaluated.
So given that we're anticipating this would be for passenger and freight, who would own the bridge? Do we know that yet? And who would maintain it and pay for all those costs?
Yeah, we don't know that yet. There'll be a long negotiation about that, I would expect. Yeah.
What is the process to figure that out? How many years from now will that decision come to this board? What are we looking at here? We know this is a long time. It's not being solved in the next couple of years, but talk us through that.
Rob here, I'm going to jump in on that question because you're correct. That is a complicated process of negotiation, and Union Pacific owns the right of way, and you would not resolve this in isolation. You would want to think about the bridge investment as a part of an overall corridor investment. And there are a couple of opportunities to do that. One is through this corridor identification program that FRA is establishing, which is intended to really take the high level view of a corridor. How does the operations work? And as Jim said, solving the passenger operations issue without solving the freight operations issue actually isn't going to solve the problem. But we do think Corridor ID offers an opportunity, and all the work we've done to date is going to feed into that big system planning effort. And then the second is Link 21. This obviously would be a critical investment to make as part of a Link 21 investment. If we're going to make that improvement into San Francisco, and the peninsula, we certainly want to address this core problem on our corridor. So I would say this is, given the significance of this bridge, it's really going to increase our confidence in knowing whether this problem can be fixed at all. And then we can take that into some of these broader planning efforts.
Got it. And then my final question, given that some of the areas right near the bridge have some real problems in the future with sea level rise, are we going to try to solve those two things separately, deal with this bridge, deal with the sea level rise issues along some of the track that's right at the water? Are we going to try to do it together?
I think we'll probably end up trying to do it together in that sort of phased way. There's going to be in those, if you remember the blue circles around things, there'll be spots that are worse than others. I don't know that the project will be pursued because of the first thing to hit water or not, but it does present a lot of phasing opportunities to respond to that with a program to solve for the sea level rise along that corridor as a whole. So this is just a very small part of a larger piece, but at least we're getting a hint that you might want to think about this route. And now we have these phasing options. And the state of California liked this too, because they could see, oh, phasing is good. It builds up, build the story up, different funding opportunities too with sea level rise.
Okay, thank you. And I think this from a rider perspective, as Derek mentioned, this is probably one of the most important things we can solve. I mean, there's nothing more frustrating than spending a day in Sacramento. You're on your way back, you're so close, and the bridge is up and you're just sitting there for 20 minutes. So yeah, this is big. I know it's going to take some time, but I'm glad we're working on it.
Director Jane.
Yeah, I too have experienced this delay on this bridge. And, my dad was going to pick me up in Davis and I had to keep calling him and I'm like, well, it's going to be later. It's going to be later. And, I was shocked that the ship navigation actually has priority on the bridge. So it's kind of unpredictable when you're going to get stuck. I know we have slots, but still they seem to have priority. I was curious about having two trains on the bridge at the same time, the passenger and the freight. Does that add extra design cost and load to the structure? And of course, I was curious as to, cost sharing with UPRR and Amtrak and how that would work. Those are my questions. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, if you have two trains on the bridge, it would be designed to hold that. We don't have all those details yet, but I can pretty much say from certain that you'll want the operational flexibility to have as many trains as between the signals as you can there, and the bridge would be built to withstand that. And I think it would be dangerous to build it to maybe, as I was saying, when you invest in this bridge, you want it to stay up for a long time. The funding questions you had are...
I was actually asking about a siding, like if you could build a siding off the bridge, save money that way. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Like a single track bridge.
We could look at that. For the freight trains though, they're usually too long to deal with a siding like that. So it could work for us, but the real cost of building the bridge is the supports and the structure of the bridge. So it'd actually probably be more cost effective to just build a good 2-track or 4-track stacked bridge all at once rather than build it thin and then have a little siding. So it would be evaluated. And then the funding question, we're very early on with this. We have some order of magnitude understanding, but we don't have a whole funding picture built up yet. I think through Corridor ID, we can afford ourselves that opportunity to look at strategies, start to tap into federal resources, and go through the different planning processes, both at the state level and also at the federal level, and project development phasing.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Director Hernandez?
Yes, thank you so much for this presentation. I'm still getting immersed in all of this language, and this was, to your point, sir, very easy to streamline to kind of understand, although I know it's very complex. One of the things that I appreciated is the look at not disrupting so much the community itself, like as we were looking at Vallejo, and I see that there's only 2 in Benicia, Martinez, that would be. Is there 2 grade separations that would be added? I appreciate that, because as I see now and I'm learning how many times that there is rail that's going in between a city or a downtown, how it affects accidents or fatalities on rail. I'm seeing more and more of that. And so I appreciate any efforts to keep away or reducing the intersections that are happening. The other thing that I just wanted to note is in regards to the sea level rise, my wonder, I sit on a different regional task, Bay Area Resiliency Mitigation Task Force, currently working on the sea level rise question. So I wonder if there's opportunities there to collaborate on the efforts that are happening in the region and how I can help facilitate some of those conversations as well. Solano County itself has some work going in place right now that I would also like to see an opportunity to maybe contribute some of the expertise of the individuals that are closely working Benicia area to support your efforts in regards to their timelines and work and what they see already coming down the pipeline, as we currently are working on mitigation plans and resiliency adaptation plans right now. I think that would be supportive of your efforts as well. The other thing that I just wanted to ask is it's very clear about the next steps in regards to the looking at the missing pieces. My question now is, what are the next steps for this? So we've received a report here today, then what happens?
Okay, so the next step for us would be to finalize this report and have the board accept the report and its conclusions. After that, though, we'll be into the corridor ID program. If there was no corridor ID program, or even if there is, you still have to go through a planning phase of this to look at the community, the markets, the operations, and things like that. And that's what the corridor ID is good at doing, or should be good at doing. Then the step after that is to actually begin the formal process. So you'd be getting into the environmental documentation, looking at analysis. So we have, I would estimate, at least 2 to 3 years after this is done, just getting ready to start the real project work itself. And we'll have to see what corridor ID timelines and how it affects us in terms of that timeline. I would say that's probably a hopeful point, but we'd like to get into the formal development process in California, the 4-phase process, PNED, PSNE, all those acronyms, working your way towards construction. But it's going to take a lot of effort and analysis, and reach out to partnerships like you suggested, which would be very helpful. This is indeed a sea level rise project that can be looked at with that lens. So any assistance, leadership is much appreciated in this area. And we have Shirley Chen, who's a real expert in sea level rise for us on our staff. So she'll help tap into that resource.
And I'll add too, important to note here is the bipartisan infrastructure package that was passed a few years ago provided a level of funding that is far and away higher than we've ever had for intercity rail, and really even opened our eyes to the possibility of fixing a problem like this. Prior to that bill, I would say there really weren't a lot of programs out there that would be able to address something like this. So we want to keep moving forward. Our hope is that the program is reauthorized and we continue to see additional significant funds invested in intercity rail. Part of what this project does is it gives the public a vision for the kinds of things we can invest in to make intercity rail better. As Jim said, it is going to take us a few years. And on the intercity rail side, we're figuring out how to invest in projects like this. And so we'll keep you posted as we move forward on the project, and very much appreciate your offer.
Thank you very much. Seeing no other board members, I'll just make a few comments. One, I'm supportive of the east alignment. I also am supportive of the separation of passenger and freight, and in particular, the phased implementation of slope stabilization. Above our tracks is something that was once called the Carquinez Scenic Drive. It was a highway built around 1900. And in 1982, it was closed by the county following a massive landslide. Not even bicyclists could go through for many years. And the Park District has since bridged some of the gaps that occurred. But the slopes, there are very significant challenges. And I would expect that will be a major focus for some time to come to build that stability as well as achieve resilience from sea level rise. So this is a very positive outcome that was unexpected from this director, at least. And I look forward to seeing that win-win for the public so that we end up improving our reliability and speed. That'll conclude this item, and we can move on to the legislative and funding report.
Thank you, Rob Padgett here. So I'll keep this brief. Your packet includes a summary of movement on the federal and state side. On the federal side, we'll obviously keep our eyes on the federal budget process. Unfortunately, the continuing resolutions slow things down and make it more difficult for FRA to push out some of these notices of funding opportunity. We continue to track those, and I know we've shared some of those with some of you who are looking for opportunities to invest in things like grade separation, and we will continue to do that. On the state side, we are keeping an eye on the budget process and are working with CalSTA. We will be coming back to you in April to approve the draft annual business plan, which is going to be an important part of our request for funding for the next fiscal year. With that, I'll pause, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Any comments from the public, please?
Yes, no speaker cards received, Chair Rayburn, but I see a hand on Zoom, and so we'll go to Michael. Michael, please go ahead.
Hello, thank you again. Michael Barnbaum in Sacramento. On federal legislation, Rob had touched a little bit on it in the previous and closing the previous item, and that was the bipartisan infrastructure law. And I know there's been a lot of movement on that particular legislation, which was approved and signed back in 2021. And I noticed this month, the movement about the bipartisan infrastructure law was very focused on the Federal Railroad Administration coming out with its long distance train travel study. And one of the things I kind of grappled with it was currently, I didn't realize this till I looked further into it, there are 15 existing long distance routes. 2 of them only offer service 3 days a week. So the study targeted moving those to daily, the Cardinal and the Sunset Limited. But it also looked at expanding the long distance network with an additional 15 routes. One of those, which was a little intriguing to me, was San Francisco to Dallas with service to Martinez, but then it would go down to Merced, Fresno, Bakersfield, and Barstow, hitting Phoenix, Tucson, Albuquerque, El Paso, Midland, and Dallas. So wanted to see if the FRA would be available to come to a board meeting and discuss this and how the Capital Corridor would play a role in this study. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Barnbaum. Any other public comments?
I don't see any additional hands raised, Chair Rayburn.
Comments from the Board of Directors? Seeing none, let's move on to the Managing Director's report. Rob?
All right, thank you. Rob Paget here. I'll just wait for the slides to come up here. All right. So I'll give a quick update on our performance and talk a little bit about what we're hearing from customers, recap our 49er season, and then as usual, we have to welcome our new people to our small and nimble team. Go to the next slide, please. So on the, and this gives you performance for the first quarter of the fiscal year. We are continuing to see what we've seen in recent months, which is a growth in ridership year over year, up 16%, revenue up 28%. So those trends are solid. We're still well below where we were in 2019, but the trends are quite positive. Our on-time performance is still below our historic 90% level. Again, that is primarily due to issues with third-party incidents. Vehicles on the tracks in particular is our real challenge these days, actually well above the bridge lifts that we talked about earlier. Farebox recovery, we talked about that at our meeting in November. We are moving into a very good place there. The expectation is that we hit 50%. We're running at 47% for the first quarter. So obviously that's a really good sign on the budget front. If you can go to the next slide, please. And we always provide you an update on where we are doing with trespasser and vehicle-related fatalities on the quarter. Unfortunately, we've had 7 so far in 2024, which is at a pace similar to where we were for 2023, which was a record year. We talked in previous meetings about the many strategies that we have underway to deal with this issue. We will be putting together a proposal for the CRISI program when the next notice of funding opportunity comes out, and my team is working hard on some targeted investments to deal with this in some real hot spots. Next slide. On the customer service side, the big takeaway here is we are getting lots of comments from customers, and the comments are neutral. We consider that to be a positive. That means people are reaching out to us, not necessarily to file a complaint, but to ask a question or to check in or to give us advice on something. So we keep an eye on this, particularly if we're making any big changes, to see if there's an uptick in negative feedback from any customers. You know, the next slide. And I wanted to slip this in here. It's a little bit of a promotion here. Hopefully this will see lots of positive comments from customers. Our live GTFS real-time feed is being picked up slowly by the third-party apps out there. It has been picked up by Google Maps. So when you're sitting on that train and you've got somebody picking you up at the end of the line, there is a source now that will be able to tell you that that train is running late. This is a really important step in our CalPIDS program. There's more to come on this, and hats off to Shirley Chen, who's been the leader on this project. This is a big step for us, and I know for those standing at unstaffed stations in particular, this is a really great way for people to see where their train is. Go to the next slide, please. And what a heartbreaking end of the year. But a great year for ridership for the 49ers game. And this has been discovered. These are great numbers for riders. I would say that once we have more equipment, which we will next year, these numbers will be higher. I have no doubt that there are people who did not ride because they were a little too uncomfortable with how crowded these trains are, but this was such a great service to the stadium, and kudos to my team for doing a great job. Thanks to Amtrak for delivering, and same with Union Pacific for being so flexible through the course of the season to make this happen. And then I think my last slide here. So welcome, Wisam. He's out in the audience somewhere. All right. Newest member of our team, and he's a part of our finance and budget group. Our money is a whole lot more complicated than it was 3 or 4 years ago. And we're excited to have another member of that team to help us navigate all those things. With that, I'll pause and I'm happy to take any questions.
I'll first go to public comments.
I didn't receive any speaker cards, Chair Rayburn, and I don't see any hands raised on Zoom.
Director Maple.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you for the director's report. Always good to see some of the exciting stuff that's going on. Glad that we're seeing increased ridership as it relates to some of the games and concerts. I think that's wonderful. And I want to hope that we continue to go down that path. On a less happy note, though, I was obviously struck by, I'm saddened to see that we're on track and to see record fatalities again. And I hope that that's not the case and that something changes. But as you said, it's only February, and it's very sad to see those numbers. And I apologize if this has been brought up before in previous meetings, but have we checked in at other rail services around the country and seen, are they experiencing something similar to us in terms of those numbers? And do we kind of have a sense of why?
Yeah, unfortunately, it is not uncommon. But I will say that California is higher than the rest of the country. And what we are seeing is that FRA is really trying to focus on the issue out here. I know we talked at a previous meeting about the plan for a safety workshop out here in California to raise the visibility of it. I would say that we do have a lot of support from local communities. Part of it is related to encampments along the tracks, but unfortunately some of it's related to suicides. So we are doing our best here, and so this is not this is really a multifaceted challenge that we have to take. We are doing some things in suicide prevention. We are doing some things to keep people from crossing the tracks in places where it's really just a shortcut. And then we do have the partnership with Union Pacific to really discourage people from camping out on the corridor. It feels like a safe spot, but it's not a safe spot. And we want to get the message out there as quickly as we can so that we can avoid the tragedies. But we are working hard on this. My team is working hard on this.
Thank you, and just appreciate that clarification. And to the public, those who are in the room and listening in, that's something that we are paying really close attention to. We have implemented strategies already, and more to come. And we hope that we continue to see decreases instead of increases. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, and Director Salzman.
First, yay on GTFS. Is there anything we can do? I know it's up to the various app developers, but is there more we can do to get the word out so others, there's just so many on the market now?
Yeah, so we're participating in the MTC efforts. So we're pushing that out through all those channels, and most of those apps use those. I think it's a matter of the cycles of when they update those feeds. Yep.
And then on the fatalities, I could have seen this wrong. I didn't notice when I was reading earlier. It looked like they were all in one area. Is that correct for this year? Or was I looking at that wrong? They were all in like the Berkeley, Emeryville, Oakland area?
I'm not 100% sure on exactly the location of the ones this quarter.
I didn't see any blue ones anywhere else.
Yeah.
I think there's at least one down near Hayward.
Okay, I missed that one.
Most seem to be in. Yeah.
So, but they're all in Alameda County, and it's just a few cities. So I just wonder if we need to, I know we've talked to these cities. I know we're working with the county, but I wonder if we need to revisit that, if that's where the big problem is right now, and see what more we can do together, and see what resources these folks can bring to the table in getting communications out, in whatever else. I think the cities don't want to see this either. So I think we just need to work on it together.
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate the comment. And also to mention, we are coordinating at the local level. Police forces are coordinating across Union Pacific, Amtrak, and local police departments. But Alameda County has been a leader in trying to address some of the I'll say somewhat deficient grade crossings, and really trying to target some investments. And they are moving on those projects, and we are actively working with ACTC on that. So we're going to pay attention there as well.
Okay, I just think if we can elevate it, I mean, the current chair of ACTC is a city council member in Emeryville. So,
Yep.
you know, let's see what we can do. Let me know what I can do. I serve on ACTC. We meet tomorrow, so I'm happy to talk to folks. But I think if folks on that commission saw this map, they'd be very concerned and want to do more.
Yep, thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Director Frerichs.
Yeah, just a quick follow-up to both Director Maple and Director Salzman's comments as well. I mean, I so appreciate all of the efforts that have been underway, and I certainly recognize there's this around trespasser fatalities, and I recognize there have been some work done here, but I think that the item around having FRA do the safety workshop, I mean, with co-sponsorships by, of course, CCJPA and other agencies, BART, whomever, I think is really important. I mean, and I think I know everyone has a lot on their plates. I get that. So, but I really think that we should be pushing FRA to have that kind of I mean, there was a discussion of that previously, and it seemed like that was going to happen, and there was trending in that direction that it was going to happen. But if there's anything, the 5 of the deaths in the past couple of years have been in Yolo County. I mean, all pretty closely bunched together. And so while many of this year's deaths have been in Alameda and sort of bunched near a couple of cities, we've certainly sadly experienced our own share of those fatalities. So I do think that we need to be just continuing to sort of double down on our efforts around this issue. I know we're not going to have, reduce it probably to nothing, but it's, I think there's a real need for us to sort of make sure that we're keeping it sort of on the top of mind.
Yeah, we'll take that message back to FRA. And then the other thing to note is that we are working, and we have for years worked actively with Operation Lifesaver in California, which is really an impressive organization. And they have their ear to the ground on a lot of the current issues. And we're going to continue that partnership as well.
Mr. Chairman, if I could.
Yes.
Mr. Paget, how's contactless payment going? What are the metrics on that? You don't have to answer now. I'd just be interested in seeing how that rollout is continuing to, how it's impacting these improving numbers. And then did I see somewhere where we've got a Cappy Hour coming up or some sort of, are there Cappy Hours coming? Because I could use one.
Today.
I thought I saw something.
So
I read too much and retain.
My team is taking note. We will promote a Cappy Hour coming up here. We always love doing those. And then your question about Tap to Ride. So we will come back to you with an update on that. And we are going to be moving into a little bit of an expansion of participation in that. And folks may have seen on the train, we are starting to install the readers on other cars. So we originally just had those in the cab cars, but we're starting to install those in other locations.
And I'll wrap up with.
I have one, sorry.
Director Hernandez.
Yes, I wanted to skip back to the fatality piece. Last night, my city council, we were working on policy specific to homelessness. One of our neighboring city, the city of Fairfield, just passed a policy for protection of infrastructure of 30 feet that helps our local law enforcement enforce the individuals to be moved away from that specific area. In my understanding, our fire marshals have to go out to identify what is critical infrastructure. And I'm not sure that rail specifically applies, but my wonder is, can we understand more what would help us be able to, at the local level, put in policies in place to enforce a certain amount of distance between rail and where encampments are located? Because if we are empowered with that ability, we just need the legal language to understand. And well, of course, we're working with our city attorneys, but I don't know if anyone's seen anything across rail that is allowing the local policymakers to implement that. That's a question I have. As I have 2 rail crossings that are on your map as higher risk, and we had our own fatality not too long ago.
First, appreciate we'll look into that new law or statute that's been passed. We are working with Solano County. I know my team has been working with Solano in particular because they are working on some ways to allow some sort of enforcement. Because you're right, that is the challenge sometimes, is we have some limits to what we can do. And we want to respect those who are unhoused and make sure that they have a safe place to go. So there's a tension there between safety in the corridor and respecting those as issues as well. But we will check into that and appreciate the heads up on it.
Thank you.
And finally, just to follow up on the safety focus from many of my colleagues, it's been a number of years since we've run a safety train with Operation Lifesaver. And I think it's a very positive event to bring on board members of city councils and mayors from the various cities and city managers to look out the window and see what's in their backyard from our perspective. And that's a time as well, of course, to let the media know what we're doing to address the problems. And I think it's a heightened awareness is what we get out of that. So it certainly wouldn't hurt. Has there been any discussions with Operation Lifesaver?
Agree, absolutely agree. And we invite a lot of local officials to those rides, and you're correct, it raises visibility and awareness. So it has been a very effective tool, and we are going to look at some opportunities in the near future to do that again.
Tremendous.
Yep. Thanks for the comment.
Okay. Seeing no other comments, we'll move to board member reports. Anybody? Director Haudesheld?
If I can get this microphone to work, what's the key?
Oh.
Well, I want to ask forgiveness of my fellow directors and staff for having gotten causeway this morning and not having taken the solid advice of my spouse, who says, always get to the airport 2 hours before your flight because you never know what's going to happen. So I ask your forgiveness for being late, especially since we had two important action items that on Capitol Corridor this morning. So, and staff prepared it, but Jim, what a great report. Now, I only saw half of it, but I'll go back and watch the film. I had in earlier this month, I had the opportunity to join a number of Sacramento electeds, economic development folks on a Greater Sacramento Economic Council, Greater Sacramento Economic Council trip to Germany. We have a number of German companies, Siemens being one of them, Bosch being another, who are located, SMA Solar, who are located in the Sacramento region. And I got to ride a train. I got to go almost 200 miles an hour. And it was a thrill. And I'm looking forward to the day when we can do that here in California. We were in Aachen, we were in Stuttgart, where Bosch is, we were in Munich. We went to Siemens to their manufacturing facility. And we rode regional trains, we rode the high-speed train, and we rode the underground train. Our hotel in Munich was right outside of where the surface trains and the underground trains, the U-Bahn and the S-Bahn meet, and it was a great experience.
Any other Director Chapman?
Thank you, Chair. I just want to make a note on 6F, the Davis crossover and signal replacement. I want to thank Rob and his team and the folks at Amtrak. There's March 6th, there are 2 outreach meetings in the city of Davis for the Amtrak project that's happening in Davis at 4 o'clock at the train station and at 7 o'clock where the overcrossing would land on Olive Drive. So just wanted to flag that, and also again thank Rob and his team for your efforts in coordinating this with Amtrak. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other reports? I'll share that on the January 24th, I joined the onboard business plan workshop aboard train 525, I think, coming out of Sacramento with Rob and staff members, and soliciting public comments from our passengers on the train for the business plan. As well, I'm one of the guinea pigs for the Tap to Ride, and I used my Tap to Ride for that trip and submitted my expense report. And so I put the Capital Corridor through its paces to make sure that Tap to Ride provides thorough documentation for expense reports, and we do now. So, brief report. The next board meeting will be on April 17th at 10 a.m. at the Solano Transportation. Yes, public comments before we adjourn. Any public comments on items not on the agenda?
Yes, no speaker cards received, but we have a hand on Zoom. So we'll go to Alita. Oh, I'm sorry.
In-house. Welcome.
See you there.
Is this?
Yes, either or.
Hello.
We hear you.
Yes. Okay. My name is Alan Miller. I am not in a professional role today speaking. I'm speaking as a citizen of Davis and a Capital Corridor rider. 25 years ago, we had a train we called this, that was numbered 720, and it was the first train of the day eastbound. And it left Davis at 8:22 and got in at 8:45 into Sacramento, which I commuted on. Then later we had the 522, which left at 8:02, then 7:57, then 7:52, then 7:47, basically arriving between 8:30, 8:15, that sort of window, which is perfect for getting in at 9 o'clock into Sacramento, which is when most state workers start their day and most business meetings start, or at least the window of business meetings. Now, the thing is, there are 3 agencies that are now talking about a return to work, and there's going to be more. And you need to be ready for that. And what happened was several months ago, you took the 522, and after it had already been moved back slowly 15 minutes, it suddenly went back a half hour, and it now gets in around 7:45 in the morning, which isn't really convenient for the people from the Bay Area and Sacramento who are trying to get into Sacramento for work or business meetings. It's way too early. The next train leaves Davis at 9 o'clock and gets into Sacramento about 9:30, except the 524 is an incredibly unreliable train. It's often a half hour, an hour late because it comes out of San Jose, and it's just plain not reliable. The other thing is that parking, low-cost parking, is now plentiful because of the lack of state workers. And because people are going to be going in 2-3 times a day, it's probably going to be pretty plentiful for a while. And I now drive in often because it's so easy. I don't really like to, but you know, sometimes I don't have a choice. And so I know that you are in an existential crisis financially, and adding a train is not easy. And I don't really have a great solution, even though I'm a rail transportation planner, because of these limitations. But that 9 o'clock arrival is a prime market for eastbound people trying to get into Sacramento. And it's going to become more important again. So I highly urge you to look at having a train that arrives in the 8:15, 8:30 time into Sacramento. Thanks very much.
Thank you for your insightful comments.
Okay, I don't see any additional in-person speakers, so we do have a speaker on Zoom.
Okay, so that brings us to an adjournment.
We have one.
Chair Herbert, I'm sorry, we have one person on Zoom.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I don't know what
Great.
April's microphone's on.
Oh, better? Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Alita, please go ahead.
Please.
Thanks again, Chair Robert Rayburn. Alita Dupree, for the record, she and her with Team Folds, representing Skirt Folds. Good meeting today. You know I love a good public meeting. Can't seem to get enough of them. And I want the best capital corridor that we can have, and I need my clock here, it would help. And overall, Capital Corridor does well, though. A few weeks ago, I boarded in Oakland. I think it was on a Saturday, expecting my normal 8-minute ride to Emeryville. We ended up 32 minutes late because the speedometer went out. That is an Amtrak issue. So I ask that you interface with Amtrak in ensuring that Amtrak does its part to make sure that we're running on time. And I do commend the repair team for coming out. That's because we're able to limp into the yard. So we want to work on that. And I am a tap to pay user. It works. Never had a problem. I hope that we can expand that and get more readers in the trains, make sure that they're turned on, and ensure a good user interface for the Amtrak conductors, so they don't have to go into another car and get the card reader, because they do have the right to check the fare. And I just tell them, I said, well, yeah, you can go get the card reader. I'm probably going to be off the train within 2 minutes. So they always make it back to me, but we want to have a better method with checking fares. And electrification, I hope for someday, and I'm very happy about the renewable fuel that we are using. I hope they will get renewable fuel in New York on those systems that we use in New York City. So I hope to be back on Capitol Corridor soon, because I always want to be reminded of that I can never have enough Grand Central Terminal. Capitol Corridor is always with me. Thank you.
Thank you. And now that brings us to an adjournment, and I'll see everyone on April 17th at the Solano Transportation Authority in Suisun City.